I really want to welcome everybody here today because I know that Debbie is absolutely a font of information around this self-publishing space. So I'd love to introduce you to Debbie Lee, who is the Content Acquisitions Manager and Business Development Manager. I think I may have jumbled that a little bit, Debbie, but she's one of the key people behind the IngramSpark platform. And if you're not aware of what IngramSpark does, then be prepared to be surprised and delighted that there is something like this powerful tool available to authors like us. So Debbie, thank you very much, and you kick off whenever you're ready.
Thanks so much, Jane, and lovely to be here with you all. And I'm sorry I haven't got the PowerPoint up for everybody, but I said to Jane, I will send it to her. Sorry it didn't reach Victoria, but it might still come up, and then you can disseminate as required down the track. But I'm referring to it just so I don't get too lost in my conversation. We have some really good topics of conversation that Jane's identified, and I think that you've probably disseminated to everyone. But effectively, we're going to talk about self-publishing. What are the pitfalls? What are the pros and the cons? We're going to talk about global distribution and how print on demand absolutely facilitates that. And then about, what the costs are involved in self-publishing and how much you can earn on your sales for, if you do the print on demand side of things, and also how to maximize sales more generally, about building the author platform. So it's a lot to cover in quite a short time frame, and hopefully we'll also have a bit of time for questions. I'll just give you a little bit of an overview of myself. I actually started in publishing over 30 years ago, which makes me a very old person, but I'm not that old. But generally, I started as a trade sales rep. I fell out of an arts degree with an English literature background back in the day when arts degrees were sort of de rigueur, and there was no such thing as a publishing master's, which is now quite commonplace. And I started with a company called Australasian Publishing Company, which was a small company up in the northern suburbs of Sydney, and we represented overseas imprints, hardcover fiction, non-fiction, children's books, and lots of art books. It was a really beautiful, prestigious list of overseas imprints, and it became Random House, and then we merged with Century Hutchinson and became Random Century for a bleep, and then these days it's now part of Penguin Random House. It's the biggest trade publisher. So it went from a tiny little company in the burbs to the biggest trade publisher in the world. And that, I just tell you that to give you an overview of what has happened in the publishing industry over the last 30 years. What's happened is, with all of these mergers and acquisitions and sort of like a conflation of the number of publishers, but the bigger publishers, the publishers are bigger. There's a lot more opportunity for indie self-publishers to come up through the ranks and create quite a stir in the publishing industry. So for all of that sort of monolithic size publishing, it actually creates more opportunities for the smaller presses, and not just the indies, but the small sort of organic publishers that come up maybe with one or two titles and then grow under the radar. So it's a really exciting time to be a writer. I then moved into academic publishing, partly because of all those mergers and acquisitions. The wonderful heyday of publishing seemed to have sort of changed. So I moved into academic publishing, first of all as a TAFE acquisitions editor, and TAFE in those days was huge. There was a lot of government funding, national curriculum came out, so a need for localized textbooks. So I could do no wrong, and I thrived, and then moved into more higher ed and doing sort of health education, really, perennially topical areas. But I yearned to sort of spread my wings. Eventually, in 2014, I discovered this whole new world of print on demand. I joined Ingram, what was called Ingram Lightning Source. I should edit that. It's now Ingram Content Group. That is the name of the company. And I've learned a lot in that time. And in that time, print on demand and global distribution have become part of the publishing infrastructure or the ecosystem. So it's really been a very dynamic period in which to be in this side of the business. So to move along, just to talk to you a little bit about Ingram Content Group and why that's important in terms of the discussion we're having today. It is the world's first print-on-demand developer. So basically, John Ingram, who inherited the company from his dad, who was a very, very successful, he started out as a library supplier, and then he built a wholesale business where they actually have physical stock. So in the US, They have inventory from all the large publishers and they ship that stock all across America. But John Ingram, the protege of his father, E. Bronson Ingram, created the concept of technology that is the ability to print one book at a time in a very, very short time frame. And if you have those printers feeding the files from one country to the next, you literally can print a book that was produced and uploaded in the US, can be printed in Australia where we have a facility, or in the UK where we have a facility. So we have these three main posts, if you like. In the US, there are about 5 different print facilities, but we have the ability to ship books, literal, to route books via the server to print in location closest to the end destination point. So it's a very sort of dynamic, innovative, revolutionary technology. But the other element to what Ingram Content Group does that is different to any other printer, and we don't refer to ourselves as printers, we refer to ourselves as a wholesaler, because we also have a direct relationship with retailers. So retailers set up an account with Ingram, publishers have their own accounts with Ingram, upload their titles as PDF files and ebooks. We distribute ebooks as well. Retailers, if the publisher has placed pricing against their title, that signals to us that they want us to sell the book for them. Retailers can then see the book on a catalogue feed and order the book, and then we pay the publisher for those sales. So it's very, very interactive and it's very seamless, and we just print what's required when it's required. So you don't need to print thousands of books in the hope that you might sell them. It's basically print to order. So I think that's sort of, a good overview of what we do. Just then to broaden it out to what's happening in the publishing market more generally, I did read an article last year about the US, and basically the statistics show that about 300,000 books are published by traditional publishers each year in the US, but over 1 million books are published by non-traditional markets. And I'm sure by non-traditional markets, they're referring to the indie authors, also referred to as self-publishers, author publishers, or the new term, which has become quite sort of phrase to use, is the authorpreneur. So if you want to call yourself an authorpreneur, go right ahead. It's a legitimate tagline. So basically a lot of indie authors, they might just want to do one book, and it might be a business book that's there to like sort of almost like the new calling card for their business, but it might be the start of a whole series of books if they're, passionate about children's fiction or romance or whatever. So it is just, now it's at your fingertips, and that's where, Ingram comes into it. So, and a lot of people ask, well, how much does it cost to self-publish? And that is really how long's a piece of string. It all depends on, so many variables, but generally speaking, you could spend as little as $1,000. You could spend as much as, 20,000 if you want to, but 5,000 to 6,000 is a pretty good ballpark for a standard book. And that's to do with the employing of the editors, which is completely essential. Don't ever think you can scrimp and save on the editing. And that isn't just passing it by your best friend. That's actually employing someone that can look at it subjectively, that's trained in an editorial capacity. And also probably about 30% of that, 5,000 to 6,000 would be spent on marketing. And the rest is the printing, the proofreading, the distribution. But of course,
sorry to jump in there, Debbie. I just wanted to put that in perspective, though, in terms of, let's say you've got your book ready, it's been proofread, it's all good to go. All that you need to really be prepared for in terms of uploading onto IngramSpark is, I think it's $49.
Correct.
Yes, so this is not just to make that piece of clarity there, that you guys are, really that covers, I'm sure, whatever costs. You've got an amazing platform there. So that's just
I hadn't even touched on that. So in terms of getting to the IngramSpark space, and you just look up IngramSpark on Google, and it would be so much clearer if I was showing you the PowerPoint as I go. But thanks, Jane, for clarifying that. That's sort of like what you do before you've even come to IngramSpark, basically, in terms of preparing your manuscript. But once you want to get your book into our system, we require a print-ready PDF file for the cover and for the content, and you upload that, and the upload cost is $49 US. And there's no further costs except for when you start to print. Obviously, you have to pay for the print and the shipping. So,
and might I say, also, sorry for jumping in all the time, but incredibly competitive. One of my authors, I think, ordered, and you're not ordering huge amounts. She ordered 100 books last week, and she's pre-sold 70 anyway, so she's safe in ordering 100 books, and the cost comes in at a smidge over $5 a copy. Now, these are bookshop quality books that you're getting, and it's amazingly disruptive in a brilliant way to an industry that used to be very elitist in terms of just barriers left, right and center in terms of trying to self-publish your own book, let alone getting a door open to any of the traditional publishers.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's happened. So, while there is a fewer publishers, but they're bigger, they are still they've become more and more selective. And often you'll find, already known entities like celebrity status authors is what sort of attracts mainstream contracts. And that means, in order to crack through that barrier, you really almost start out, sometimes self-publishing is looked at as a last resort, but these days it's, people are doing it off the bat. This is, taking control, looking at it as a business, an opportunity to promote, their knowledge, their creativity, without even needing to think about a traditional publisher. But if your book starts to sell, a traditional publisher may, start knocking. It can be a means, to an end in itself, or it can be a stepping stone to mainstream publishing. And one of the things I was going to talk about, in fact, was, what are the options in terms of there's traditional publishing. And that basically means that a publisher gives you a contract, they pay for all the costs of the production, they cover all the marketing and the sales, although they will still want you to be very proactive on the marketing front. So you still need to, in order to even attract a contract these days, you have to have a bit of an author platform. You have to show that you're already involved in social media, that you've got a lot of, a large network and ways of promoting your title, but they'll help you with that. And they then take all the revenue, but they pay you a royalty because they've covered all the costs. So that's your option. And we do say, if you get a traditional publisher contract and it's a, great publisher that you're very happy with, you will get a huge amount of support. And, we encourage it. And chances are that traditional publisher works with us and will eventually, if not right up front, a lot of books become print on demand with Ingram. Probably, a lot of publishers use this. They might print an offset print run for local distribution, and they'll put the book into distribution with IngramSpark, Lightning Source, which is the traditional part of Ingram, to get global distribution. So one thing doesn't discount the other. But the other, when you're learning about how to find a publisher, you may find that Vanity Publishers pop up on your radar, and that's the area that you need to be a little bit aware of, because they do also ask for a lot. They do your production, they say they're doing your sales. That's a moot point, but they will charge you a lot of money. They will pay you a royalty, but you've already paid them a lot of money to do the editing and the production, and you lose a bit of control. You might be happy with the outcome. When they talk about marketing, what they're doing is putting the book into the Ingram Content Group system and having it available for sale. So you lose control and you pay out. Yes, you get royalties, but it's a lot of sales before you get your money back. So if you're looking at doing that, we think you're better doing self-publishing. Even though Vanity Publishers are a big part of our system, we would recommend IngramSpark because you're in total charge. What that means is, and it takes me back to that sort of, $5,000 or $6,000 that I mentioned, which is very much just a ballpark figure for an average size, novel. What that means is that you appoint professionals to assist you. So you're not left in a sort of, vacuum. The writing is the solitary part, but the production is the part where, if you work with the group that we refer to as author service providers, which is what I think, Jane, we'd refer to you as, someone that's going to help you editing, designing, cover art, picking, in consultation, trim sizes, paper finish, all of those sorts of things. You're in charge because you're paying that person, you're employing that person to also use their network of contacts, because no one person is going to edit and design. And you're certainly, not required to as the author, but you do have at your disposal a range of experts out there. And we've got a list of author service providers, but there's any number of really fabulous people, Jane included, that understand our system and will help you produce the files ready for upload, which is, you know, where you set up your IngramSpark account, and that's free. That you just look up IngramSpark online and you can set up your account online. You just need an ABN and a credit card. Otherwise, it's all, you know, fields that you fill in, very, very self-explanatory. And effectively, you upload your file. But you've employed other people to help you produce to the best standard. And it looks, as Jane said, just like a mainstream trade published book. And knowing that mainstream trade publishers and academic publishers use our system means, you know, it's going to come out looking exactly the same. And you can print one book. You don't have to print hundreds and thousands of books to try and sell down the track that gather dust and take up space. So there's no, so, you know, this is why print on demand makes sense. No guesswork in terms of first print run, but certainly, as Jane also mentioned, you know, you are, while you're writing and while you're producing the files, you're building your network, you're letting people know, you're actually sort of marketing the book in advance of publication, just like mainstream trade publishers do. They will have their reps going out to retailers 3 to 4 months in advance of the book actually being published. That gives them a sense of knowing how many to print. They will have already figured that out at the costing stage, but it confirms that they might even be getting a bit of feedback about, you know, oh, don't really like the cover, or that looks a bit like this book, or, you know, and then they can still be workshopping that while they're selling in. But with print on demand, once the file's up, that basically means the book's ready. But you are still building anticipation. You are, you know, and so you've got a bit of a sense. So when you first print it, you might want to print 50 or 100 copies because you know you're going to sell that many. But after that, you just print as you need, if that makes sense. The other thing is there's no warehousing costs. We can deliver directly to your end customer. So yes, always have your box of books at hand because you will be hand selling and people will be coming to you directly. And if you've got a website and you're selling from that, you might want to just ship books out directly. But you can also just place an order for us. You can have it, you can select to print in the US or the UK to ship anywhere in the world, or in Australia for Australia and New Zealand. So it's, you're effectively not, you're not having to sort of ship things that take weeks and also, you know, cost a fortune to other parts of the world because of our vantage points. The other beautiful thing about it, we print within 3 to 5 days. You can even escalate that if you pay a bit more, but the time frame turnaround is just remarkable. And if you do see a little typo, which is inevitable, you know, most, even mainstream publishers, when they print, there's always something that they go, oh, you know, there's a little glitch. Once you've printed 3,000, you've got to sell it. When you've just printed a few, you can just upload a revision file, or just say that you received an award, or you got a quote after your book was printed that you really want to put on the cover. You just upload a revision file, which is $25 US. So your book's always fresh in that way. So they're the main points. That POD is just so incredibly versatile and valuable to indie authors. And particularly, you know, with IngramSpark, the ease of access, as Jane mentioned, you know, if you've worked with professionals, you know that your file is going to be absolutely perfect. Once you've set up an account, you upload your file in PDF. You can also upload ebooks, as I mentioned. And so we are actually distributing to about 50 ebook vendors, as well as all the retailers. So when you upload your file, you have to, all these drop-down boxes will sort of, you know, present themselves, and it's just metadata. It's the name of the book, the back cover blurb, the keywords that you should always use, the BISAC codes, which is cataloging, library cataloging systems. So you really should utilize all these fields, because the better the metadata, the more discoverable your book. And once that file's been uploaded and all that metadata has been filled in, the fields that you can use, and you don't have to, if you're not planning to sell the book, if it's just a personal memoir or a business book that you're selling in your, you know, in your business, then you might not want it to go for sale. So you just don't apply pricing. And in those cases, you don't even need an ISBN. We apply a SKU for you. But if you are planning to make a book available, you have to acquire an ISBN. You go to Thorpe Bowker online and you acquire an ISBN, we recommend you acquire 10 ISBNs because it costs $88. If you just acquire one, it costs $44. And if you've got an ebook and a print book, or you might even have a paperback, a hardback, and a print book, you've already got your 3 ISBNs. That you have to have a separate ISBN, even if it's the same title, for each format. These are sort of things that, you know, unless someone tells you, you might not even realise. So that's the recommendation. But you need an ISBN, then you apply pricing, and all the fields will tell you which regions you can apply pricing in, and you can decide, I only want to make it available for Australia because I might sell the rights in America, but chances are that's going to take a while. So might as well put pricing in for all markets. And that way we are feeding out your file, your metadata, to all the retailers via a catalogue feed. And then people might go online, or they might hear about your book because you've done such great marketing, and they'll go into their local bookstore, or they might look up on Booktopia or Amazon. And basically 40,000 channel partners around the world have access to your title. That's the number of retailers, other distributors, library suppliers, specialist bookstores, institutions, all have accounts in some way, shape or form with Ingram. Doesn't mean you're going to get 40,000 sales. It just means that your book's available to that broad network of channel partners.
And Debbie, I'll tell you what I say to my authors once they, you know, we've loaded their book on, they've got the email saying, you know, approve to go to distribution. So they hit that, and I say, now, 2 days later, Google yourself. And then I start getting the phone calls. Oh my God, my book's in Target. One of my authors, Sharon Cullington, has written a parenting book. Target is selling my book. And, you know, Beck Mowbray, who's a memoir, she's, Barnes and Noble. And, you know,
that's magnificent.
Fabulous. And I have a personal story that I love from a couple of years ago. I wrote my book, you know, my kind of signature piece, if you like, Mindset for Authors, How to Overcome Perfectionism, Procrastination and Self-Doubt. And I was busy telling everybody, I'm not worried about book sales here. This is my business card. And back before COVID, I'd be running a lot of events at the State Library. On every seat, there would be a copy of Mindset for Authors. You know, it literally worked for me in that way. It was a business development tool, really. But somebody said to me, oh, I saw that your book's in the Dymocks Father's Day catalogue. How did you arrange that? And I'm going, well, you know, I didn't. Such is the power of IngramSpark.
Isn't that fantastic? And that is so true. And there are a few sort of you know, tips of the trade in terms of augmenting your exposure to that market. So you've got ultimate choice over your pricing, for example, but compare your book to others in the market. Don't just kind of wing it. Go and have a look in bookshops if you're not in lockdown. Really better to physically have a look, but you can also look online and see books that are in the same genre, of the same sort of trim size, page extent, whether it's hardback or paperback will have a big impact on your price points. And also know that the higher the discount that you apply in your metadata, that's the discount that basically the retailer gets. But also note, we do take, as a wholesaler, a little distribution fee from the retailer's margin. So, because one of the key questions, and I know that you're all eager to know, is, you know, how much will I make on the sale of my book? If you price your book at, say, $29.95 RRP in Australia, in our system, you put it up ex GST. So divide that by 1.1 and we add the GST, and that's how it will show up on the retailer. If you put a 50% discount, we do take a 5% commission on the retailer's margin. So they'll get 45%. So when you're promoting to retailers, do not go into the shop and say, oh, it's got a 50% discount, because they'll look it up and they'll go, no, it doesn't. But just say it's available from Ingram. And if they don't know how to order from us, I will actually send you, Jane, our details for retailers to set up accounts. But 99% of retailers already have an account with Ingram, because if they're not ordering locally, they're actually shipping stuff in from overseas, because we do have that physical warehouse as well. And they might be consolidating that with books that are POD from the US. But now we actually have in our catalogue feed called iPage Australia. So if the book's got an Australian price point, they can see, oh, I can order it from the US or from Australia. And they'll usually order it locally, because we print within 48 hours for retailers, and we get the book to them very quickly, and they just then, you know, do that. They've already sold the book. They don't tend to buy speculatively from us. So one of the things to note about print on demand is, yes, your book's in the catalogue. It's available. You let your network know that they can either order it from you, then you've got to do all that transaction, or they can order it from your preferred retailer. You can put a link if you've got a website. Make sure that you've checked that the book shows up at the right price on the website that you choose. But if you put 50%, great, no one will change your RRP. But if you put it, 30%, looks like you're going to make more money, but retailers aren't making enough. So they might increase your RRP, and then you're going to not get the sales because it's a recommended retail price, right? It's not set in stone. They can do what they like with your price, but they will honour your price if they're getting the maximum return. So 50% discount is ideal. And then when you're looking at pricing for US or UK, make sure that you don't just convert your Australian dollar price, because books are priced differently in those markets. The cost of print is cheaper because we're doing a lot more volume. So you can reduce the price, but yeah, have a look online to see what a similar book is priced at. Price to market, in other words. I've talked enough about that, I think. So we've talked about the setup costs. We've talked about the fact that when the secret to know about distribution, we make the book available, but you're responsible for actually proactively marketing the book. There are lots and lots of online resources, which I've got a little list of, which I would show you, but I can't right now because I'm not showing you on the screen. But, have your marketing plan. So when you're writing your book, even before you start writing your book, think about, why am I writing this book? Who is it for? How am I going to reach my audience? What does my book have to appeal to that audience? Why is it different from anything else that's out there? Why am I the best person to write the book? And what's it going to look like? What's it going to cost? How am I going to kind of, plan this book? And who am I going to work with to make this book the best it can be? All of those things are really critical as part of the planning. And that will also become a live document that you will update when you come across new ways of marketing. You might, while you're writing, you'll be alert to new opportunities, jot them down, make sure that you have a touch point with all of those opportunities that present themselves, because you're immersing yourself in research while you're writing. But the other thing we have, which is going to be really beneficial to you, is online resources. Whether or not you put your book into IngramSpark, you can look up that IngramSpark website, all one word, just Google it. And you'll see under resources, which is a tab along the top, you'll see resources, and then you'll see calculators. So the really great calculator is the print and shipping calculator, because that helps you decide what the book's going to look like, even while you're writing it. Because all the drop-down fields are trim size, paper type, whether it's cream or white, or colour or black and white. Whether you want a gloss cover or a matte cover, doesn't change the price, it's just the look. Whether you want hardback or paperback. So all of these variables, what you do have to put in, and you won't know it if the book's not ready, but you will have a guess at it, is the page extent. You'll know it's going to be about 200 pages or 36 pages if it's a children's picture book. So you put that in, and up will come the cost of print per unit. And as Jane said, that might be $5 for a 200-page paperback black and white book. And the cost of shipping, you just have to put in a, local postcode just to know what it's going to cost to get a single copy. You can put in 500 if you want to print 500 and see that there's a little bit of a volume discount for the larger volume orders. And, that just helps you conceptualize the look of the book while you're writing. As I say, it gives you an idea of what it's going to cost, but you're also thinking about the format. Even if you don't put your book into our system, you're very welcome to use that resource. And the other really useful resource that's directly underneath that print and ship calculator is the publisher compensation calculator, which is what tells you what you're going to earn when the book sells through the retail market. So that's based on, as I say, your pricing, say $29.95 ex GST, so say $27.63 or something like that, less the 50% discount. That's your net receipts, less the cost of print. And so just say that you've made it's $27.23 minus 50%, so it's going to be around $14. And just say the book costs $5 to print, you're going to make, what's that, $11 each time it sells. We pay you, so you get a sales report at the end of each month that a book is sold, And then 90 days later, we pay you what's called your publisher compensation for those sales. If you have 10 different books in your account because you've become, a very established author, then you can place orders at any time, by the way. You just go into your account, you can place an order for 5 of this, 3 of that, 2 of that. They can be 3 different types of books: hardback, paperback, color, black and white. It doesn't matter. And that, you can place an order for as many books as you want, and we still produce them in 3 to 5 days. Bit longer for hardback, so they will come separately, 5 to 7 dads. But then it's over to you. Oh, my kitten, I don't know if you can see me, but I've got a kitten here. He's just woken up. So then, you're basically in charge of when you want to order, where you want to send it to, and the surprise factor is the sales that come from having your book priced for the retail market. And the one thing I didn't mention on the retail market front is it's not just, Ingram's own connection with those 40,000 channel partners. We also have print partners dotted around the world in very, exotic places. We've got print partners in Germany, Italy, Spain, Russia, Poland, India, Brazil, South Korea. Japan's just come on board. I think South Africa's in the wings. So we have this range of print partners who ingest your US price. If you enable Global Connect, they will take on board your US price, convert it to their local currency, feed it out in their own catalogue feed to their own retailers, who will, of course, decide we could buy it from Ingram in US dollars and have it shipped over, or we could buy it locally in our own currency and get it within a couple of days. We just route the file. How good is that for the environment? It's so conservation friendly. It's so much, and it's quicker, it's better value. You get paid in US dollars based on your US pricing for those Global Connect partners. So that's a really exciting, that's the global distribution part of it. And why not take advantage of that? You never know where a book might sell. And we've got publishers that have done exceptionally well in India, for example, and it's sort of almost, I'm sure they've had some thinking behind it, but it happens without them knowing necessarily. The other thing I've noticed is that nothing's too Australian. Some of the really established publishers like Black Ink have their books for sale. Black Ink's a very prestigious Australian publisher in Melbourne. They've got their books for sale in the US, and the book that's really done incredibly well, when I say incredibly well, it's sold a few hundred copies and it's constantly ticking over, is Growing Up Aboriginal in Australia. So just to give you an idea of how saleable your books might be and where they might find a market, it's pretty, it's sort of a lovely surprise when you get those statements saying this book sold in this market. You don't see who the retailer is, but you see the region. I have to let my cat out. So sorry. Think of a question, Jane.
Oh, well, does anyone else have any questions they want to throw at Debbie? We won't open completely for questions yet, but just if anyone's got a random question around this this topic. Oh, here's Debbie back anyway.
I'm back, sorry.
That's all right. No, I think we'll keep moving forward though, because this is going really well. Really good content.
Oh, is it good? I hope I'm touching on some key points that
people know. And in more detail than I could have imagined. So thank you.
Oh, and it would have been better, obviously, with the slides. But what I will say before we do run out of time, we won't, but you can contact me. It's debor.lee@ingramcontent.com. So, and we've also got customer service. So that's the other thing. We are literally in Australia. We've got people to answer your call or your emails. So we're really sort of hands-on. We're not sort of some remote location, which is always very nice for people to hear. So then,
actually, did you just say you're not? Are you not seeing your slides? Because we are seeing your slides.
Oh, you are?
Yes, Victoria's got them going, and she seems to be keeping pace with you very well too. So well done, Victoria.
Oh, wow.
You guys,
sorry, I had no idea. I was just sort of thought, gosh, it's really weird. It's got this weird screen behind it, and I didn't know that. So I've just jumbled around because I didn't think you were seeing my slides, but that's really great. So where are we up to?
We are up to about how to maximize sales, the author platform.
Thank you. Okay, well, that's really good. So what I was saying before was, we make the book available to the market, but it's up to the author to promote themselves. Yeah. And that really is, I think, where you start right from the beginning. And obviously not everyone's going to want to build a website, but that is what they sort of say these days. If you do that, you need to blog on a regular basis to keep it alive and grow your market. But social media is so important, you know, and some people hire social media experts to help with that sort of thing. But that recently we had an author that sold 14,000 units, like copies of her book, by going on TikTok. Like, it was, phenomenal. So things can take off in a viral way if it hits the spot and you're using the platforms that are most appropriate. But some of the more simple ways of promoting your book is obviously getting review copies. So one of the advantages of print on demand is obviously you can put up your penultimate version without an ISBN. You can just use one of our SKUs. You could put a watermark on it saying that this is a sample copy, getting it out to the media or to reviewers and in advance while you're still finalising the finished book, and then upload another book with an ISBN and put a quote on if you've already got some fantastic endorsements. So that's obviously going to be a great way to get that book into reviewers' hands. But having a book launch when there's no lockdown, going into a bookshop and frequenting your local bookstore, not just kind of turning up saying, hey, I've got a book, but becoming a friend of that bookseller. A few years ago, we did an indie publishing forum, which was a travelling roadshow, and we had a guest author and a guest author service provider and a guest indie bookseller, independent bookseller from each region. And they all said the same thing. Don't turn up when you've already published your book. Buy books from us, talk to us, ask our advice. We might even, read a sample chapter or something. But, and then if they're open to it and they've got the sort of venue space, have a book launch in a bookshop or in a public library. But do that sort of networking well in advance. Submit your book for Writers' Awards. So think about that and put those potential awards on your marketing plan while you're writing. And if it's genre specific, be part of that community, obviously. And the areas that are doing incredibly well are genre specific. So science fiction, romance, YA fiction. They're areas where there's a massive network community. Go to conferences and events, even online these days. And there are so many in, specific areas. So just lots and lots of opportunities. The areas that I can't speak to from personal experience, but certainly worth exploring are these online marketing tools. There's quite a lot of them. This is just a little, smattering of opportunities. So explore that. Some of them are paid services and some of them are free, but it's worth just exploring those opportunities out there while you're, again, developing your concept. So I think that's pretty much it in terms of, the marketing side of it, because, it's so individual. And then the metadata, which I have talked about, but all of those features that are so important when you're devising your book, especially things even like the print attributes is part of the metadata. So the discount is important, XGST in Australia, any other area, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about tax, that's all taken care of. And table of contents, obviously, even while you're writing, that's going to change, but having that plan will keep you in a kind of, space that's safe. You're not going to go off on tangents if you know that you want to have your book about 10 to 12 chapters, say. Once it starts getting to, you've gone over that, you might start to think, gee whiz, I'm losing the framework for my end result that I'm after. So they're really just, it's pretty straightforward, but you know what, it sounds like it's straightforward, but when you are writing, you get so immersed and it's that objectivity that you kind of lose. So having that structure there can really help. And it's the sort of thing that, a publisher in a mainstream publishing house would be offering you. And they'd also be helping you schedule that output. So it might be that you have a plan to do a chapter a month and obviously finessing that sort of thing. But print on demand, I think, is the other thing to note is, as I mentioned, print on demand is part of the picture. If your book starts to take off and you do need to, stock a whole lot more, or you want to appoint a distributor, you can actually do that. You can use print on demand and work with a mainstream distributor that has sales reps that gets your book into the retail market. So do think about those opportunities. Sometimes those distributors, well, they work with us. They might order your books with us on your behalf via an agreement. You have to allow that. Or they might just say to you, we need a couple of hundred, we're going to get that out to the retailers, and you print with us for delivery to that distributor. So they're just a few options, and it's very much dependent. There's not a whole lot of distributors out there, but they do exist, and it's worth looking at that. But they will take about 67% commission because they'll be paying the retailer, 40 to 50%. So you get back, obviously, a lesser amount than if you were being paid directly from a sale, but you're getting extra exposure to market. Just, these are just some of the options to think about. I think, obviously there's resources online. IngramSpark gives you a constant update of resources. So you've got blogs, you've got video tutorials, you've got podcasts, but there's also a whole lot of other resources that will feed your, inspiration and help you along, that are just from Googling, self-publishing, generally speaking. And these sorts of, events, sessions online are invaluable, I hope. I'm sure, everyone will get something different from these sorts of events, but it really does help you to belong to this community and share your knowledge and experience. I think what I do like to show people, now that I know that I'm being seen, little examples. So for example, we have such a variety of publishers that work with us, and one of the publishers was a company called the Sydney Story Factory, and they're in Redfern and also in Parramatta, and they work with kids, sort of targeting kids from underprivileged backgrounds, but really I think it's open to everybody. And they had a book launch, and they created these beautiful books that were written by children in upper primary and lower secondary a few years ago, but they're just little novellas, and they've done them in this beautiful little format. They've got cream stock, all designed by a professional author service provider. Someone else that does really interesting publishing. She's a microfiction publisher, so each page has its own tiny little story, but it's a little square book, and she chose a format that has what's called a duplex cover, where you can print on the inside of the cover. Not all trim sizes allow it, but just to kind of get your mind ticking over, when you look at that print and chip calculator, you can really understand the scope. And it's just about the level of creativity and the skill of the designer, that, you can do things that are very innovative. And another book that I thought was really lovely, I just picked these up along the way, when I'm talking to publishers, is this beautiful dust cover, matte finish with a cloth internal hardback book. So, children's picture books, we do lovely hardback, square formats, all different sizes, for something for everyone. But just, you think about that. You don't have to stick with the straight and narrow, but if you do want your book to sell and it's in a genre, try to kind of fit with that. Don't do something that's really sort of, out of the zone. If you know that romance books tend to look a certain size and be a certain extent, choose something similar. Tends to be, people tend to use white stock for business professional textbooks, cream stock for novels, because it's just a little bit easier on the eye. But again, no hard and fast rules. And you can even change it, because it's print on demand. You choose a matte cover, and then you decide you want to make a gloss cover. It's just a metadata change. So, you can have various versions of the same book available. So I think that's sort of, is that covering a lot of things?
I bet you there's a question or two, though, from the audience. Does anybody have a question for Debbie?
Sorry, Sandy here. Look, I came in halfway through, so I've missed out a lot, but I think it was fabulous what I heard. So not a question, but a comment. I think it's fabulous, and I look forward to Jane's rerun.
The recording, yes.
Recording when you send it out. Thanks so much, everyone.
My email address as well, it's jane@writewithjane.com. Just shoot me an email if you'd like a copy of the recording. And Sandy, I've already got you on the list, but anybody else who'd like a copy of the recording, I'm happy to shoot that through.
Yeah, can I just add a comment?
Yes, Kelly.
Yeah, I didn't actually have a question, because for Debbie, but because as Jane said, it was just so comprehensive. And I think I might have missed you speaking at various conferences that I've been to. So I'm so glad to have the opportunity to join in on this one. But yeah, I had honestly no idea the extent to what IngramSpark actually does. So this was a huge eye-opener for me as an editor who works with a lot of authors who want to self-publish, and they're always saying to me, oh, who should I go to? Who should I go to? And now I know. So yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So much. Yes, it's been fantastic.
I think the fact that we're local, that we have the customer service support, we don't do, help with the design, but you do get, if you're uploading a file and if there is any quirk, because there's a file creation guide, you do have to have a little bit of technical now. So that's why we say work with the professionals, the editors and the designers, because you'll have your own network of designers, right? You'll be doing the editing and then so you manage the process. If those designers are then familiar with our file creation guide, and there's a checklist of sort of one-page document, which is pretty straightforward, then the file should upload without a problem. If there's a glitch, you get an error report, and then, it just might be embed your fonts or get rid of crop marks, because if a file's been prepared for an offset printer, it will have crop marks. And for a POD environment, you have to get rid of the crop marks. So little things like that. And then you just upload the revision file. Then you get an e-proof once the book's gone through, and it only takes about 24 to 48 hours for the file to be ingested. Once that happens, you get an e-proof. You should approve the e-proof, look at it really carefully. If there's anything that you want to change, you upload a file before approving the e-proof. If once you've approved the e-proof, you order one hard copy. So you get that physical copy, and it's like a proof. You do have to pay for the print and shipping. If there's anything then that you see, like that one typo that missed everybody's eyes, you just upload a revision file. That's when it costs you $25 to upload a revision file. But you'll only be doing that, once probably, unless, as I say before, you get a quote that you want to put on the cover. Well, that's really worth spending the $25, to get that extra marketing boon.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, and we're there to help with questions about, tracking orders, or, how do I change pricing? You can change your pricing at any time. It's not set in stone. So you can and you can take a book down. If you don't want it distributed, you just, because a publisher came along and said, wow, we love the look of your book. Can we offer you a contract? And you don't want it to be in the market anymore. You just tell us and we cancel the pricing. So it's no longer being distributed. So it's that simple.
It really is
Absolutely.
crazy, Kelly, isn't it crazy?
Yeah, I can attest to the quality of the books too, because an author that I work with, she's just had her play turned into a book through IngramSpark, and beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
That is, I love it. I love meeting authors, and the fact that, we offer this versatile platform. We don't own copyright. We don't have any intellectual sort of control whatsoever, and we don't want to. There's no, barriers. So it's literally, once your book's in our system, you can still print it elsewhere. You could, print one book with us and never again. And you can set up your account and then 2 years later upload your book. There's no urgency. You're not signing your life away. It's not like a contract that you have to deliver in a certain time frame. So that takes the pressure off, but it also gives you a sense of, belonging. That's where you're going to end up with your files. And in the meantime, as I say, you're building your networks. So nothing to stop you having that account ready for when you do upload your files.
That's great advice. Thank you, Jane, for bringing Debbie to us.
Oh, you're welcome. I might have to get her up for our author showcase event, which will be at the beginning of now next year. It was going to be October, but Debbie, I'll shoot you information about that.
You're in Sydney. That's my
right.
home base. Any excuse. I'm there.
We just need the borders open. That's we've
right.
got to work on that. Yeah. Well,
that's
listen,
right, but I'd love
everybody, thank you so much, and join me in thanking Debbie for all of that incredible generosity in terms of your time and sharing so much, and just being an integral part of IngramSpark as well, because I'm sure you've had an impact on the way that they've developed, even since I first met you several years ago. There's so much more available now.
Absolutely. And, you know, that's what I'm so passionate about it. So I think that comes through, and it's grown like topsy. I don't know, I can't take credit. I think it's just a great service, you know, so, and the market's there and we've answered a call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You bet. Well, listen, guys, we'll say over and out for now, but reach out to either of us if you have any questions, and certainly reach out to me at jane@writewithjane.com to let me know if you want the recording.